Why did we lose Aljunied? Mr. Lau Tia Kiang himself said that they won Aljunied not because the Aljunied team did not do a good job, but because the voters wanted the Workers' Party to be their voice in Parliament. Mr. Lau's analysis is fair, and I agree with him. This desire for a strong Workers' Party voice in Parliament was a political tide which came in through Aljunied, which we were unable to withstand despite our very best efforts. Right from the start, the Workers' Party made Aljunied a national battleground. Many of my supporters asked me to stay on to win back Aljunied in 5 years' time. I met them last night and leveled with them that it is better for a younger person to take on this important task. I talked about the importance of transforming the PAP. This is a belief which I've held for some time. It was not something I felt I could say when the campaign started. But as the campaign went on, as we heard the growing cry from the heart, I decided to make it plain. Like it or not, we're entering a new phase in Singapore's political development. And how we respond to it will decide Singapore's destiny in the 21st century. I would help in whatever way I can to bring about this transformation of the PAP. I wish I had a mandate from the people of Aljunied to be a strong advocate of such transformation, but I don't. Many young people have stepped forward to help me in this campaign, and for a few years before that. Even more have cheered me on. It is not good that so many of them feel alienated from the Singapore they love. I look forward to continue working with them so that the Singapore we struggle for together is a Singapore they feel is their own. As to the actual role I can play, I'll be happy to respond to them. In the last few years, I've learned much from my young friends. Often, they led me rather than I led them. In this general election, a younger generation has been politicized. Since the GE results came out, there's been a flood of support for me expressed personally through friends and relatives, on email, and in an astonishing way on internet and Facebook. The words expressed are heartfelt. Many wrote me long passages, some in tears. I'm grateful for their kind and comforting words and the many good wishes. It will be an honor for me to be an advocate of their cause. From the bottom of my heart, I would like to thank the people of Singapore for the honor of serving them in the last 23 years.
I'd like to ask you, did you think that the WP would win with such a decisive margin of 54.7%? And also you mentioned earlier that you would help in whatever way you can to help transform the PAP. What are some of the key factors which you would bring up when you were contributing in that manner?
We thought from the outset that it would be a tight contest. We never expected that the margin would be what it was. In fact, right up to the eve of cooling off day, I think the general feeling among many people, and I'm told among bookies too, was that it would be a tight contest. Your second question is...
transformation of the PAP. What are some of the key factors which you think the party should be looking at?
Well, the party would be taking a hard look at itself, soul-searching as to how our society has changed and why there was this resentment against government. And we've got to to work at this so that we can achieve a new unity in Singapore. A new unity which also embraces, engages, involves the young. And that's very important. Otherwise, we'll be a divided society, which will not be good for Singapore. There's so many opportunities out there. If we are united, there's so many things we can do, so many opportunities to seize.
This is not something new. You spoke about the need to reattach Singaporeans to the government as far back as when you were introduced as a candidate. So over the last 23 years, how much were you able to effect this within a collegial cabinet? And looking ahead, what do you think are the lessons from there for the new cabinet?
We must never stop adjusting to the forces of change in the world. Either we change or we'll be changed. Within the party and the cabinet, I've always kept true to that position. Of course, in a collegial system, you don't often make things public. But in my public communications, most Singaporeans would have noticed that I did not always take an orthodox position.
I mean, that was your public position. Perhaps within the cabinet, it was a bit more difficult for you to effect those changes. Do you think that the forces that might have hampered that mission earlier on might now be mitigated against knowing the cost of ignoring this mission?
No, I don't think so, because PM has indicated quite clearly and forcefully that there's a sea change. I'm not sure if he actually used that phrase. Maybe Senior Minister Goh Chok Tong used it. So there is recognition and there has to be a response.
Minister, I have 3 questions for you. The first is, as you noted that a lot of residents actually, or Singaporeans in general, would like to have you as our foreign minister, but yet there's a desire for more alternative voices in Parliament. What is your take on the view that you and your team was a necessary sacrifice for the better good of Singapore's political development? That's the first question. The second question is, both you and PM have indicated strongly the need for reform within PAP. However, in your opinion, is this view shared within some of the other top ranks within PAP and the cabinet? And moving forward, what will the main hurdles be? And my third question is a question that has appeared many times in this GE. What is your greatest regret in life? Thank you.
That between having a strong Workers' Party voice in Parliament and losing the Aljunied team, they put a high priority on having their voice in Parliament. So that's their decision, which we respect. The second question, the transformation of the PAP, I think many party members feel that way, and in the coming weeks and months there will be many discussions, debates about the way forward. We've got to gather feedback from all supporters, from all walks of life, from outside the party too, from the young, from the old, from the educated, from the less educated, from all classes, from all groups, and try and find a way to achieve this new unity. It's very important. It's not just one or two persons. I think it should be the revitalization of a movement which in an earlier phase of great unity created Singapore and enabled us to make the astonishing progress which we have made. What we need to do now is to re-achieve a new unity so that in this century, with all the challenges of globalization and information technology, also fragmentation, we continue to surge ahead. We are smack right in the middle of a region which is bursting with energy. If we get our domestic politics right, we'll have a very bright future. Then your third question about my greatest regret in life. Many people have asked me that question, and to be very frank, it's not the way my mind is constructed, not the way I think. I'm a bit of a Taoist, so I tend to detach myself and see myself in a larger flow, and things happen for a reason, and we are part of bigger flows in life. When I was at the Harvard Business School, there was a course which I take called Control, which is how does an organization achieve its objectives through feedback, audits, various control methods. And we studied all manner of feedback mechanisms, audits, checks, counter checks, and so on. In the end, the professor gave us a summation which till today I remember, which is that from time to time it's important to shake the box, because whatever system you set up after a while becomes so predictable that it doesn't capture all the feedback that it needs to have. So a certain shaking of the box is required from time to time, and this is such a time. What's the second question? In this election, race was not an issue, and we take that for granted, as if this is a normal phenomenon. In fact, without the GRC system, political parties would be greatly tempted to take stronger racial lines, and that's not good for society. So I don't think the intellectual argument for a GRC to overcome the challenge of minority representation in Parliament is in doubt. The question is, how big should a GRC be? I've been a member of a 3-person GRC, of a 4-person GRC, of a 5-person GRC in the last 23 years. My first was with Mr. Ching Hang Tong and Mr. Wan Hussein Zuri. I must say a 3-person GRC is a little small. I think 4 was good. 5 was also nice, because within the 5 we have complementary strengths and we could draw upon each other for assistance. If we have a problem which we ourselves do not have deep knowledge in, we could ask somebody else to help, and we cover for one another. So my own view is not good for a GRC to be too big. 4 or 5 would be nice. 3 would be too small. That's my view. Please.
Sir Hisham from Britarian. After helming Aljunied GRC for the past GEs, you acknowledge the great support given by the Malay voters, and especially to Mr. Zainul. Do you think you feel a bit let down this time round? And what are your message to the Malay voters in Aljunied? Thank you.
It's too early for me to draw any conclusion. I think we've got to gather feedback and do a more careful analysis. So I'd rather not answer that question now, because it's still not clear in my mind what was the pattern of voting and the reasons for that pattern.
I'd like to ask, what is the impact of this defeat for the PAP? And if you were to take yourself out of the picture, is this a setback for the party, or do you think you'll propel the party to a better change? And also the second question, what is the significance for Singapore? Is it good that the opposition occupies 6 seats in Parliament now? Thank you.
I thought many Singaporeans wanted a stronger opposition voice in Parliament. They've got that. But for some reason, I think partly because of the emotional dilemma in Aljunied, somehow there is no emotional resolution, which I'm still trying to understand. As for the impact on the party and the party's response, I think that question is better posed to the party leaders.
Question. The first one is, you have been the PAP CEC for a long time, so is there what kind of role will play from now onwards has PM discussed with you? And you have served in many ministries given your, in your 3 years in your political life.
Yeah.
What is your proudest achievement?
I'm no longer an MP. I will no longer be a minister. And in the next party conference, I will no longer be a CEC member. So that's a reality which I have to accept. Naturally, if I can contribute in small ways, I will try to, because this is my life and this is the Singapore we all love. And any chance to make it a little better, we should always try to do. It's hard to say. I've had a very good run in every ministry I went to. It's been fun, and I was lucky being at the right places at the right time and being able to do so many things. Couldn't have asked for a better run. I was very touched by the pieces which Tommy Koh and Simon Tay wrote in yesterday's newspapers. They pretty well ran through the high points. You ask me to choose between one and the other, it's difficult. It's like going to a buffet. There's some items you probably like more than others, but in the end, it's a total buffet which you find attractive.
Were there any previous attempts, that you made to try to, voice these concerns, to try to initiate any sort of reform within the party, and what was the outcome of these efforts? What kind of challenges or obstacles did you also encounter?
I see this from a different perspective. I prefer the word transform to the word reform. And I believe there are fundamental forces at work which affects not only Singapore, but which affects the whole world. Technology has changed the way human society is being organized. Once you have the iPhone in your pocket, with all that computational capability and the ability to communicate real time, relationships change. And it changes everything and everywhere. The family, the relationship between parents and children, between teachers and students, between ministers and citizens, between monks and followers. And something new is happening, a fragmentation of interest groups, a greater diversity, because while in the past, with fewer opportunities to bypass, we were all acting within hierarchies. Now hierarchies are breaking down, a process of disintermediation, and it's creating a lot of angst in the world. People feel alienated because of fragmentation. They find their friends on the internet, in the link up worldwide. The old methods of democracy, based on geographical definition, don't always work well. For instance, when the campaign started, someone from the Cat Welfare Association emailed me to say, look, can you speak up for us? Because in one of my RCs, when cats were being culled and the residents appealed to me, we accommodated them in a modest way, and they were grateful. There are no votes in my constituency, if I count only the cat lovers in my constituency. But as a group in Singapore, they are strong and they advocate a cause. And we are finding more and more special interest groups who advocate their specific causes stridently and very often quite prepared to vote around the cause which they believe passionately. I don't think present forms of democracy in the world quite capture these new passions in a satisfactory way. If you flip over to the other side, to traditional relationships, which I would put under a general rubric of Confucianism, not just tying it to the Chinese people. In an urban setting, with fragmentation, you need a new way to link human beings together so that they feel calm, at ease, that amidst all the changes in the world, they are still rooted to family and to community. But it can no longer just be to geographical communities, because we are all not only living in geographical communities. So it's complicated, and it's a challenge which all countries, all organizations face. It's not just a PAP. I would venture to say that Darwinian process is at work, that those who are able to adjust to these new patterns most effectively will gain a great advantage over those who are trapped in the 20th century. And in this transformation, the PAP will have to take into account not just this GE, but the new forces which now operate in the world.
Are there any attempts to sort of change the way the PAP engaged with different interest groups, and what was the outcome of that?
The PAP is a broad church, so there's always a lot of debate within. So I'm part of that debate. I'm often a minority voice, but there are others who share my views too. This internal debate has to continue.
In your speech, you mentioned that you indicated that you will not be running for the next election. Is this official? Does it mean officially you're exiting from politics? Is this officially your exit from politics?
Let's take it one at a time. Last night I met the key members of my branch, and I told them that I don't see myself standing for election next time round. And I thought it's better for a younger person to take charge. A few were disappointed, but many understood. So that's the position. Am I retiring from politics? My own view is it is the responsibility of every citizen to be involved in politics, because politics is about the way our lives are run collectively. So I don't think I'll ever retire from politics, because I'm a citizen of Singapore, and I've got beliefs, I've got views, and if I can make contributions, I should. We were aware from the outset, even before nomination day, that it would be a very tough and alternate. So mentally we were prepared throughout the campaign period that we could lose. It was quite clear after half an hour that the trends were adverse. So I told them that, look, we've got to be mentally prepared and alert our grassroots and families so that they too knew what was the likely outcome. So I would say half an hour after counting began, we had a pretty clear sense of the trends.
My third question is, now that you're no longer an MP, what's the thing that you're most concerned about? Would it still be the welfare of Aljunied residents or your future career path?
Life is exciting, and there's so many things to do, so many things to be interested in, so many people to meet and care for, and who will care for you. The problem is always time. We each only have 24 hours a day, and if we have good health, then we do what we can. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to my new phase. No, that's for them to decide. I mean, you have to be new contracts, and both sides must agree on the terms.
Wei Chang from Xinmin. Just wondering, do you know of any online petitions that people are asking newly elected MPs to resign and perhaps get you to replace the particular candidate?
There are many campaigns going on online. I understand the emotions and don't make light of them. But that suggestion is not the way politics is structured in Singapore.
You said that you were a minority voice in wanting to effect reform within the party. Do you think it's now become a majority voice? That's one question. Secondly, you said that you want to ensure a smooth handover in alternate GRC. What are the mechanisms in place for that? And what will it take for the PAP to win back alternate GRC 5 years on? And third question,
Can we take one question at a time? No, I won't say that I'm always a minority voice. Sometimes I'm part of a majority voice. So there are issues where I'm in a minority, and there are issues where a majority supported me. PM keeps an open mind. We know what happened in the IR. We talked about it earlier. Even PM's apology at Boat Quay. He came down to Kaki Bukit, and after the walkabout, we sat down for coffee and we were reviewing the progress of the campaign so far. So I told him that there was deep resentment which had to be acknowledged, not just cursorily, but in detail. And it was not just a question about policies. It was not just the minds we were addressing. We had to address the hearts too. He listened very hard, he paused, and he later he told me that it was because of that conversation that he took that position at Boat Quay. So I'm a voice. Sometimes it's in a minority, sometimes it's part of a majority.
In your opinion, what does it take for the PAP to win back alternate GRC 5 years on?
The structures we keep intact. And I told my supporters last time, my party supporters, that we keep close to one another. In any case, even if I completely retire from politics, these are bonds of friendship which are lifelong. And I told them that we must look after our own people. Then as for the new administration, well, if they work for the people of Aljunied, we will support them. But if we feel that the people of Aljunied are not well served, then I think we should voice our views. That's what I told them. But otherwise, the structure will remain intact, and we must work to winning back Aljunied in the next election. And it depends a lot on the national mood. This time round, there was a 10% swing, which was largely because of this resentment against government. As Mr. Lautakan himself said, it's not because the Aljunied team had not done a good job. So we continue to be earnest, to be humble, to feel for the people living there, and I believe we'll be able to win them over again. But a lot will depend on the national mood at the next election. And that would in turn depend a lot on what the PAP does to transform itself.
Some of the residents may be a little bit worried now about the upgrading plans in their constituency. So what will happen to the Aljunied 10 programs, and do you have some words of reassurance for the residents?
Existing programs, which are already decided on, will continue. As for the future, that's for the Workers' Party to take charge.
There's this conspiracy theory online that you are placed in Aljunied GRC because you are too outstanding, so that in a way you can be sort of like wiped out. Yeah, so we'd like to put a rest to this theory. And secondly, can you give us a clue as to whether you'll go to public sector or the private sector?
Someone sent me that conspiracy theory, which I thought was rather funny, and yes, put it to rest where it should be. As to whether I look to the public or private sector in the future, we're keeping all options open. I say we because it's a decision which my wife and I will have to take jointly together, in consultation with our children. What is MFAs, the new minister will take over, is an institution. We have officials, we have processes, So I'm not worried. Then there were some projects which I've been involved in a more personal capacity, like the Nalanda project and the Sun Chung San Jinenguan and a few other things. Those I will continue to take part in because they are interesting. I believe in them, and I will continue to do what I can to advance their progress.
How can your successor fill this shoe?
I'm touched by the expressions of support, by the things they said in Jakarta. But prime ministers come and go. It's part of life. We work with it. So I don't see a major hiccup there. Of course, if you know someone well, you're always sad to see him go because then you've got to develop a new relationship with someone new. But that goes on all the time. I'll be on call to him. If he has any doubt, any question, any discomfort, I'll be very happy to offer my views. That I'll do happily.
In the past, in wards won over by opposition, the PA grassroots have toned down a lot of their activities. Is this likely to happen in Aljunied?
There will be an adjustment because the town council will take over common areas and then they will decide what to approve and whom to work with. We've got to adjust to that. But PA will keep intact the CCC and the community club and the RCs because these are important channels for us to communicate, through which to communicate national policies to residents.
I'm sure you have seen all the calls for you to be the next president of Singapore. Can I ask whether is that really might that be one of your options? I think another thing that was going around is for you to go over to UN and take over. Again, your thoughts on that?
I'm flattered by all these proposals. UN is out of the question because it won't be Asia's turn after Dr. Ban Ki-moon. As for the elected presidency, I'm a free spirit, and I don't think I'm temperamentally suited for such a job.
That message perhaps removed whatever fear that voters had in them of voting for the opposition. Thank you.
I think the desire for Workers' Party voice in Parliament was so strong that it overrode all other considerations. I don't think those were considerations which they had not thought about.
Lee on Sunday actually, when he was asked about WP's entry into Parliament, he questioned whether or not they would actually be there to serve Singaporeans or rather to oppose the PAP in Parliament. I'm just wondering your thoughts in terms of, do you think that WP's entry would be posing more of a challenge within Parliament to get things going? And how do you think the PAP can possibly work with the opposition in that arena? Secondly, I'd like to also find out from you, when we talk about your future plans, I know that you have refused to say anything about that, but do you feel as though the voice of the younger people was the cause of your downfall in this election? Because you mentioned so many times about communication. So do you feel as though the larger group of perhaps young voters out there was the cause of your defeat? Thank you.
What Parliament will be in this new term will be interesting. The relationship between the PAP and opposition parties. Pity I won't be there to be part of that. I have no doubts that the objective of the Workers' Party would be to further strengthen its position in Singapore, and the positions they take, what they support and what they oppose, will have that firmly fixed in their minds. This is not surprising because that's what all political parties do. It is an adversarial system in Parliament, and you don't want to have the ruling party score more points and win more votes in this election because that will be to your disadvantage. So that's a calculus, and it's to be expected. Younger voters are. I think nationally there was a swing among younger voters against the PAP. He said the swing was less in Aljunied GRC. So while I hear anecdotally that in some constituencies you could feel the antagonism viscerally, in Aljunied GRC, if there was an opposition against us, it was expressed almost in apologetic terms. So I didn't feel a visceral opposition from the young, but I'm sure many of them did vote against us. But the election outcome could not be explained by the votes of the young alone. I think it was across the board. Yeah. Well, I think we're more or less trying to press the olive a third or fourth time. I thank you all for coming. I thank all of you for having covered me and members of my team so intensively before, during, and after the elections. And glad that we become friends. Thank you.